Welcome in, everybody, to the NFL Week 16 preview show with Uncle Phil and Smooth Andy. I'm Matt, the host. I'll be filling in for Smooth Andy tonight. He's on the bye week. Uncle Phil, how are you doing tonight?
Good. Yeah, look, feeling pretty good. Had a winning week in the notebook this past week. 5-4-1. Probably should have been 6-4. Got beat or tied on a teaser at the last minute by Washington, where the refs actually didn't stop the clock, and time should have run out. Teaser should have covered. So anyway, just one of those things. But still had a winning week in the notebook, and then of course finished the week off by going 3-0 on Monday night. What a great way to end Week 15, and had a winning week overall. So look, it was really it was a lot of fun. We got college football playoffs starting this weekend. So look, it's trying to soak in every last minute, man. We're going into Week 16. We got 3 weeks left of regular season NFL games. It's just a lot of fun. I love football. This is what I love, and I'm just going to enjoy every last week that we've got left.
100%. Yeah, college football playoffs this weekend, and then come into the home stretch for that NFL season. It should be a blast. A lot of good football left to be played across the board.
100% should be a blast. So look, let's kind of get into it. Like I said, we're flying solo tonight. Smooth Andy's out Christmas shopping. So we're like you said, he's on the bye week, so we're out. We're fending for ourselves, but we'll make do.
He's on Fanatics buying New York Giants apparel.
Yeah, that's what he's doing right now.
Yeah. Anyways, let's you're right. Let's just jump right in. Let's go through all these games. I know everyone that listens to this loves to hear your opinion on each and every one of these games. So let's get it rolling.
Before we jump into the first game, I'd like to do like a little recap of last week, just kind of tie some things up. A few little odds and ends. The Rams beat the 49ers 12-6 on Thursday night. First game all season that where neither team scored a touchdown. Interesting deal. Through week 15, the NFC is 43-31 straight up against the AFC. Now, how that relates to the playoffs, I don't know. But, I think we do have some games here that pits those two conferences together. We're kind of more in conference season, but there are some that pits those two together. So it'll be interesting to see how the lines shake out and see if there's something that's reflective in that. Teams that haven't scored 30 points this season. That's the lowly Giants at 2-11, Las Vegas at 2-11. The Jets finally got off the schneid at 3-10 and 3-10, and they got off the schneid, and they're no longer or 4-10, excuse me, off that, and they are actually no longer on this list. New England's still on it. At 3-11, and Kansas City is the only team with a win, not only with a winning record, but a solid winning record at 13-1 that is still on this. They are offensively challenged. We'll kind of get into that. They are. It's really, it's Patrick Mahomes, the offensive line, and really just some red zone issues that we'll talk about a little bit here tonight as well. So, again, not a great list to be on, but they're on it. One other thing, Mark Andrews set the Ravens all-time TD record at 48. He was tied with Jamal Lewis at 47. Really great record. It's been Patrick's go-to guy for many years. Kind of seen that kind of tell off in the past couple of years, but has had an outstanding career. Certainly first ballot Hall of Famer. Bills Lions set a new record for most points just after the Bills and the Rams had the record at 86. The Bills lines set it at a combined 90 points. Not sure that we'll see that topped anytime soon. And then a really interesting thing in the second half of the Pittsburgh-Philadelphia game, Philadelphia possessed the ball for 24 minutes and 10 seconds out of a possible 30 minutes. And Pittsburgh only had, Pittsburgh only had 11 plays that entire second half, which was an odd. This was the highest possession of time by Philadelphia of any team in any half in the past 40 seasons. The Pittsburgh Steelers, like I said, only had 11 plays that entire second half, only possessed the ball twice. So kind of an odd thing, little thing of odds and ends to clean up. But let's get into week 16, man.
Love it. Thanks for the recap there. A lot of good information. First on the line, we got Thursday night. We got Denver traveling to Los Angeles to play the Chargers. I think we should just give me the total, give me the side, and I'll let you know what it is. And
yeah,
there.
Look, these are two playoff teams that are right now playoff teams battling it out for the wild card, right? You know, both teams are wild card teams. Denver looks to be more of a lock right now at 9-5. Chargers at 8-6. Got to win some games. Going to be a really tough next couple of games for them. We'll see how they end up doing, but right now I've got this one. Obviously in the domes, there's no weather to speak of. I've got this one Chargers at 2.5, and I've got a total at 43.
Already, I'm using action, so I don't know what these lines started at, like Smooth Andy does, but I can give you the current, and you're right on with the 2.5. The Chargers are favored by 2.5, and the total's 42. So
42
point, but pretty much nailed the game.
Yeah, pretty close. I mean, look, I kind of lean toward the over on this one. The Chargers looks like their defense has kind of been figured out. Baker certainly figured them out. Throwing deep balls. He had 3 touchdowns of over 20 yards. Bo Nix seems like a guy who wants to let it rip. We'll see if Bo can recognize coverages as well as Baker. I mean, that was the real thing. They last week had some interesting coverages back there. You couldn't, when you go up there, you're like, okay, you look at this and you're like, hey, it's a quarterback, very basic. You look at it, hey, is it man or is it zone? And then you look at it, is it going to be single high or 2 high safety? And that kind of as a quarterback dictates where you're passing the ball. And Jesse Minter, the defensive coordinator for the Chargers, has just done a really good job at masking those coverages. But Baker and the Buccaneers really just kind of blew that away. Baker's really processing things at a high level. He's a team that nobody wants to see. But we'll kind of we'll talk about this one a little bit. The big injury right now is cornerback Patrick Surtain got a mild ankle sprain. We'll see if that's going to be a big deal or not going forward. Again, Denver is winning with defense. Bo Nix threw 3 interceptions last week. It was really the fumble, the careless fumble. Again, we see these every week. I just can't believe that we continue to see these fumbles where the guy, Jonathan Taylor, drops the ball right before they go in the end zone, goes out of the back of the end zone for the touchback. And after that, it was all Denver. I mean, they were, after that play, Denver reeled off 24 consecutive points. It looked like that Indianapolis was going to go over for a commanding lead, and then all of a sudden the wheels just came off. But again, the defense is a story. They're holding opponents to 17.6 points per game. I've got 49 sacks, which is the most in the NFL. Against the Colts, they generated 5 takeaways and even 1 TD. Nick Bonito just continues to show out each week. I mean, he's pretty unbelievable. Really has made a name for himself. Wasn't really I think we knew of him, but a lot of people didn't really know of him until people are starting to really hear his name a lot and figure him out. Bo Nix, it's really, this game to me comes down to how well Bo Nix performs. I think that, there's a lot of pieces and players, but really it's Bo Nix and his records against or his stats against teams that are above 500 and below 500 are markedly different. And, just win-loss record alone, teams that are below 500, again, Denver had a very favorable schedule. So they're playing a bunch of weak teams this year, which has gotten them in the playoffs because they were bad last year. So they're 8-0 against teams under 500, but against teams that are over 500, they're only 1-5. So you can see that that's potentially the issue there, and it's really depends on Bo Nix. There's several other stats, I won't go through those, but that's a problem, and hopefully Bo Nix is getting better. We'll see. Will the Chargers defense figure out him like Tampa Bay's offense figured out the Chargers defense last week? We'll see how it happens. One last thing on Justin Herbert. His streak of passes without interception fell one pass short of the all-time record. He had 357 consecutive passes without interception. The all-time record is Tom Brady with 358. So, look, Tom Brady owns a lot of records in the NFL, some that will hold up for a very, very long time. Some will never be broken probably, but this one was in reach. And, unfortunately, Herbert didn't get that. But he is got a long career ahead of him. Hopefully, he'll get a chance to try it again.
Already could be a great game.
Yep.
Let's go next on the line. We've got the 9-5 Houston Texans heading to the 13-1 Kansas City Chiefs, and this is at 1 Eastern on Saturday.
Yeah, again, two playoff teams could very well see each other again in just a few weeks, depending on how things play out. This one's interesting for me. Houston's 9-5 is command of a really bad division. I'm not really impressed with Houston, but in command of that. Kansas City's 13-1 in command of their division, command of the AFC right now. Not totally impressed with Kansas City this year either, but they're winning, and that is 13-1 is 13-1, no matter how you slice it. There is weather in this one, but only cold weather. It's just cool. It's 34 degrees, clear, wind southeast 6 miles an hour. Not nearly what it could be in Kansas City this time of year, but that's what it is. I've got Kansas City. It was tough for me to decide on this one based on whether Patrick's going to play. I'm assuming he's going to play. He's practiced the past 2 days, so I'm going to assume that he's going to play. His high ankle sprain, again, high ankle sprain is typically much, much worse for people or for players than a low ankle sprain. It lasts a lot longer. But from everything that's coming out, this one is not as bad as the high ankle sprain he had a couple years ago. Said he could have continued to stay in the game the other night if it was a playoff game, and probably would have. I mean, Patrick Mahomes just plays through anything. He's pretty unbelievable when it comes to that. But NFL players, this is what they do, right? You've got 17 games during the regular season and you play. I mean, it's not like basketball. I don't want to go off on a big tangent, but the NBA is load management. They're like, I'm tired. I'm not going to play for like 3 games. And, that's a whole different deal that we don't need to get into tonight. But part of the reason why the NFL is so great and why the ratings for the NBA are just falling off a cliff, right? So, again, tough for me to handicap, but I've got this one at Kansas City -4, and I've got a total at 41.5. What's the actual on it, Matt?
The actual is Kansas City 3.5, but it's almost at 4. It's -105, and the total's 41.5. So pretty much on the money on that one.
Okay. Yeah. No. it kind of makes sense on this one. I mean, we'll see. The good thing is the other thing that's happening, I didn't mention on the injury report, Hollywood Brown practice window was open last week. The plan was to work him in week 17 or 18, but he's been practicing all week. There's a good chance he actually plays this week. So that'll be interesting to see. We'll see what happens at left tackle. Again, that's the problem with Patrick Mahomes. One thing they did is that interior lineman Joe Tooney, they put him out to left tackle this past week. There were no sacks on Patrick Mahomes, which is kind of amazing, as he'd had 13 in the past 3 games. But he did get hit, still got hit 13 times. One, of course, led to his high ankle sprain. Again, that's what's happening. On the contrast, just to kind of put it in perspective, what Josh Allen is living with, Josh Allen hasn't been sacked since November 10th. Isn't that astounding? I mean, it really is. I mean, he just hasn't been sacked in over a month, Josh Allen, and Patrick Mahomes is just getting crushed. But, it's really choices, right? I mean, you once you pay your quarterback, you make choices who you're going to pay. For some reason, they don't have the NFL's best tackles, and certainly it affects them. And you kind of expect, I'm sure Patrick Mahomes is involved somewhat with Brett Veach in those decisions, and Andy Reid, like, okay, what can you live with? What can you not? And in this one, this is a tough one. But I think this is going to be a really interesting game. I think we just have to keep our eyes open on Patrick Mahomes if he's going to play. Again, you've got this game and you've got one on Christmas. You've really got to win two out of these three games to hold Buffalo at bay. Buffalo's got a really easy schedule coming up. They've got New England, the Jets, and New England again. So should go through that. Should go 3-0. It's really, can Kansas City hold on through this one? So we'll see. It'll be, like I said, an interesting game. Should be a fun game. I don't buy into Houston, but the thing that'll be interesting to me is that, do I buy into the Carson Wentz-led Chiefs? We'll see. I think that Carson Wentz is a good fill-in quarterback, but I don't know how well he'd handle pressure. So it's, again, something we'll have to keep our eye on. That'll depend on how I play this game.
Definitely. And one question before we move on to the next Saturday game. How much do you think Hollywood Brown will have an impact on that offense? Obviously, he had some pretty good seasons, last 2 or 3. They don't really have a true number one. Is he going to be a difference maker for this Chiefs team?
Well, I think he can be. I really do. I think that, but another weapon is always good. But the real crux of Kansas City, it lies on those offensive tackles. The health of Patrick Mahomes now, coupled with the offensive tackles on the offensive side. But again, the defensive side, they just don't have as much speed there. And Nico Collins, you can see him getting away on the back end and getting past those receivers. They just don't have the speed to catch up with receivers. Your true number ones. The number one is a wide receiver who can beat man-to-man coverage on a slant and a go route. And Nico Collins is that true number one, and he can do that. So we'll see if that actually, how that plays out. But I think Hollywood Brown, you can have all the weapons in the world, but if you don't have the time to throw to them, that's really the key. So I think he is a really nice to have, but it comes down to protection for Patrick Mahomes.
Alrighty, sweet. Well, let's move on to the next one. We got the 4:30 Eastern game on Saturday. It's the 10-4 Pittsburgh Steelers coming into Baltimore, take on the Ravens at 9-5. Should be great.
We've had 3 back-to-back playoff games right now. We've had Denver and the Chargers. We just had Houston and Kansas City. Now we've got another potential matchup as well. Pittsburgh and Baltimore. Pittsburgh coming in at 10-4. Baltimore is at 9-4. I kind of feel like that that Pittsburgh is going to or that Baltimore is going to end up winning that division. We'll see. I'm sorry, Pittsburgh's at 9-4. I'm sorry, Pittsburgh's at 10-4, and Baltimore's at 9-5. Excuse me, made a mistake on that. I knew that was wrong. Weather on this one, is 35 degrees clear. Winds are a little elevated, 15 miles per hour from the northwest. So that's something to be watched for us to watch on to see if those winds get up, because it's right on the cusp of making a difference on the weather. My guess on this one is Baltimore -4.5, and I've got a total at 45.
Okay. It's Ravens -6, and the total is 45.5.
Okay. Really interesting that it's that high, but given what I'm about to tell you, I'm probably not that surprised with it because with Pittsburgh on the defensive side, T.J. Watt, kind of Mr. All Everything for Pittsburgh, had a low ankle sprain. X-rays were negative. Did not practice yesterday. Was limited in practice today. So still not sure if he's going to go. But on the offensive side, which is more concerning, as we know, this team is so much different without George Pickens. And he did not practice yesterday, and he did not practice again today. So that's potentially a big problem for Pittsburgh. We saw how he affected that. Rush just didn't have anybody that could beat man-to-man going deep. And it made Russell a different quarterback, and you're like, well, how different is he without Pickens? And I'd say, well, I'm glad you asked because, as far as, several stats without it, but let's just look at two of them in particular. QBR with Pickens on the field, Russell's at 67 QBR. It's pretty solid. Without Pickens on the field, Russell's QBR drops to 32. That's not good. And then as far as explosive plays, it's 20-yard plus completions. Those are what are designated in the NFL as explosive plays. With Pickens on the field, 29. Without, only 6. So again, not a great stat. But for him. But if you kind of break that down by how many times that he's actually dropped back and been on the field, so he's dropped back 195 with Pickens on the field, and he's had 29 completions. It's about 1 every 6.72 without. 7 divided by 6. About 12. So about 6 without, 6 explosive plays, or every 6 play has an explosive play per drop back, with Pickens on the field. Without Pickens on the field, and kind of a per unit thing, it's about every 12th play that he has an explosive play. So I think that's the big deal. So it's going to be really interesting how this one plays out. I've got some thoughts on that, of how this goes. But just so you know that, again, this is another one of those games where Pittsburgh has actually owned the series. The past 8 out of 9 games, Pittsburgh has won against Baltimore, regardless of venue. And so it's just been a Pittsburgh-dominated series. Pittsburgh or Baltimore, what was I going to say? Baltimore actually held Russell Wilson. We talked about his QBR without George Pickens being a 32, but Baltimore actually held Russell Wilson to a 16 QBR in Week 11, and they still got beat. So, again, all bets are off in this black and blue division classic.
Good stuff. Well, let's move on to the next one. We got the first of the Sunday games at 1 Eastern. We got Cleveland Browns coming into Cincinnati. And Cleveland's 3-11, Cincinnati's 6-8.
All right. Look, 31 degrees, slight chance of rain, really slight. Less than 1%. 5-mile-an-hour winds out of the east. Again, two teams that that really should get after it. I've got this game at DTR, Dorian Thompson-Robinson has been named the starter for Cleveland, so that's a switch. So it won't be Jameis. We'll miss out on the fun Jameis. We'll also miss out on the pick six Jameis, but I'm sure Cleveland will not. I have got Cincinnati at 3.5, and I've got a total at 46.5.
Okay. The total is 47, so pretty much on the money there. A little off on the side. It's actually 7.5.
Really?
Which, seems like a lot of points. But
yeah, especially for a division game.
Yeah.
Certainly I'll have to look at this and see where I lean on this one. Maybe some injuries that I'm not aware of, but look, this is again a division game, one that should be really interesting to see how it plays out. One thing for Cincinnati, on a kind of a freak play, he was actually scoring a touchdown on this one. A defensive end, Sam Hubbard, just phenomenal defensive end for Cincinnati, on a play where he scored a touchdown, hurt his PCL, and that is season ending for them. So not good news on the Cincinnati side. Like I said, Jameis Winston was benched during the game after having 3 interceptions this past week. And so they saw enough in DTR that he's actually going to be starting quarterback this year. We'll see how this plays out. I mean, Joe Burrow again looks. It's my weekly plea for Joe Burrow to ask for a trade. I hear he occasionally listens to the show, so Joe, please ask for a trade. He's had terrible body language. Certainly, cameras picked up on him saying some pretty choice words on the Zach Taylor's trying to comfort him, but it's kind of a mess. I mean, he was pretty inconsolable as a competitor. Sometimes these guys, really competitors at high levels, they really get locked in during the game, and they flip a switch and turn to a different guy. And as a competitor, I mean, he's poised on the podium at the end of the game, but during end game, he was pissed, and he was like, basically, we should beat this team. Paraphrasing, Zach Taylor's like, hey, it's okay, it's all right, and Joe Burrow was having none of it, and he's basically said, screw that, we should beat this team by 90 or whatever. But I'll leave that to the lip reading experts. But in what I've seen, it was pretty interesting. It'd be interesting to see if Zach Taylor keeps his job after the year. But knowing how cheap Cincinnati is, he probably will. They're probably okay with mediocrity, at least the front office is. Anyway, should be an interesting game. I'm looking forward to it, as I look forward to every Joe Burrow game. I love watching Joe Burrow, but beyond that, there's not much here this game that hold my attention.
Definitely. And one last note on this game before we move on. If you recall, in October when Deshaun went down, Thompson Robinson came in at home for Cincinnati, and he went 11 for 24, 82 yards, 2 interceptions. So that's maybe why the side is a little higher than you anticipated.
Yeah, could be. He looked a little bit better last week. I'm not exactly sure of his stats last week. Just from the eye test, he looked better, but great catch up. Thanks for pointing that out.
All righty. Next on the line, we're going to New York to watch the Jets. We got the LA Rams coming in to the Meadowlands to play the 4-10 Jets.
Okay, we're kind of skipping around a little bit. That's a 4:00 game. We've kind of missed the 1:00 games, but we'll.
Oh no, that's at 1 Eastern. At least on
that's at 1.
I guess so. I mean, that's
okay.
what Ashton says.
Yeah, it is. You're right. Right. Thank you. That was a mistake on my part. My bad. Apologies.
No.
All right. So I've got this one again. You got a team from California going and playing in the cold. Will be interesting to see how that goes out. Jets been playing really good ball lately. Rams are 8-6. The Jets are 4-10. But shockingly, Aaron Rodgers seems to be playing like they hoped he would from the very beginning. But too little, too late for them for this year. We'll see. Weather's 25, going to be clear. Winds 9 miles an hour northwest. I've got the Rams favored by 2.5. I've got a total of 47.
Okay. The Rams are 3.5 favorites, and the total is 46.5.
46.5. Okay. Pretty close to what I thought it would be. Look, I don't know what week it was when the Rams were dead last, but it was either you or somebody else that said, what's your long shot Super Bowl play? And my long shot time, Rams were sitting dead last. And I suggested at that point that you take out a ticket on the Rams because the Rams are a problem. They're just like Tampa Bay. They are a problem, a team that nobody really wants to see in the playoffs. A team that's gotten healthy. They do two things really well. They can run the ball and they can stop the run. So it'll be interesting to see how this one plays out. Look, like I said, like the Rams, like how they're playing. But again, the Jets are playing really good now, and we'll see if the 3.5, if that's too much or not. The Jets, again, past 4 games, Aaron Rodgers, 8 TDs, 1 interception, and 100.0 passing rating, and also had a team high, sadly enough, rushing yards against the 45 yards against the Jags. So Jets finally scored 30 points in the game. Really good to see that at least they showing some signs of life and fighting and not going out into the abyss, kind of like their counterparts, the Giants, which seems to be content just to roll over at this point.
Alrighty. Well, that could end up being a good game, I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
Let's move on. We got next on the line. We got 12-2 Philadelphia heading to play the 9-5 Washington Commanders. Big divisional matchup.
Yep, divisional matchup again. Potentially 2 playoff teams. Philadelphia for sure. Washington still hanging on to a wild card berth. This game's 30 degrees clear. Winds 8 miles an hour out of northwest. Shouldn't be any big deal for either team because they're used to that. I've got this one at Philadelphia 2.5, and I've got a total at 45.
Okay. It is sitting at 3.5 for Philadelphia, and the total's 45.5. So you're nailing these totals, and you're getting pretty close on all these sides besides the Cleveland game.
Well, look, I've got more information. This is the time of year where I should. I mean, obviously, I missed the Cincinnati game pretty big, but everything else have been relatively close. We'll see if that continues as we go along. But, again, we have a lot of information. For me, it's pretty, been doing this for a long time. This is the time of year where I actually should be close, because, again, that's the whole premise of how I bet is that, look, I should get better with each week goes by because I have more information. Unlike Smooth Andy, who uses technical information, he uses his own developed algorithm of betting, and a lot of it's based on public and pro, where the tickets and the money are going. It's not really how I operate. I operate based on really fundamentals of the team, and I think a lot of people get overwhelmed with too much information. I'm kind of the opposite. You give me more and more information, and I'll digest it, and I'll kind of spit it out. So at least I'm close to Vegas right now of how they're judging the lines. And when I'm close to Vegas, typically a good sign. We'll see how that plays out. Good news for Philadelphia. Again, this is what happens when you have really good teams. Unlike what's happening with the Lions, you have to have breaks, right? You can almost see it happen in college teams as well. They have a lot of injuries at the first of the year, and you're like, wow, this team was supposed to be, at least in contention for a national championship, and they're having injuries and fall practice that are season injuring to keep people, and you're like, it's just not their year. They just can't stay healthy. That's what's happening with the Lions. I've been, really high on the Lions. I think they're a favorite of people across the U.S. or even fans of other teams. They're a big favorite, or just football teams. You're like kind of pulling for Detroit, but all those injuries on there are really diminishing their chances, at least in my eyes, they are. But Philadelphia, on the other hand, as I was getting to, defensive end Bryce Huff, they've activated his 21-day practice window is opened as of today. He's coming off wrist surgery he had earlier in the year. So again, a good team is getting better. He probably won't play this week, but he'll be ready in a couple of weeks, most likely, and be ready for the playoffs. And so, again, this is what teams that win championships, they do. They get healthy at the right times. It seems like that's what happened with Philadelphia, and hopefully they'll stay that way. We'll see. The other thing, good news for Washington on this, they're getting some help. They also opened up the practice window. Really massive news for them today is they opened up the practice window of defensive lineman Jonathan Allen, who's been out with a pectoral for a while. And so, again, probably won't play this week, but, again, getting healthy, and they certainly need him on that line. Again, another divisional game, as you pointed out. The Eagles coming off a very emotional win off that over the Steelers. Washington just barely hanging on for a thread to beat New Orleans, up 17 points on Jake Haener, and then Shane Rattler came and lit them up, and it just didn't play well in the second half. So it'll be interesting to see how these teams fare in this one.
Alrighty, do you think the Eagles, are they the favorites to go to the Super Bowl from the NFC based on what you saw last week throughout the season?
Look, I think it's a really interesting question, something I've thought a lot about over the past few days, because you look at them and you're like, hey, everything's going right for them. They could, but again, what we talked about only a couple of weeks ago, or maybe a little bit more, was that teams that run the ball and who can stop the run, those are the teams that get in the playoffs and tend to do well in the playoffs. Eagles certainly fit that bill, but you look at other potential playoff teams in the NFC that do that. Look at Tampa Bay and look at the Rams. Both of those teams can do both of those things, and they can certainly do that. I'm going down the list right now, just kind of free flow, since we've got some time on Tuesday night. I look at that's really who I look at. I mean, I think it's the Rams, and I think it's Tampa Bay, and I think those teams are a problem along with the Eagles. So it'll be you kind of match them up. You kind of go Todd Bowles and Nick Sirianni. Then you look at coaches, Todd Bowles, Nick Sirianni. I don't know. I think both teams are probably, if they have a disappointing end of the season, you could see both teams firing their coaches, because they're just kind of perennially on the hot seats no matter how much they win. Eagles fans really aren't happy with Sirianni. I don't feel like the management is really happy with Todd Bowles. So both those teams go. Then you have Baker versus Jalen Hurts. And we saw Baker beat Jalen Hurts last year's opening round, the wild card weekend of that in Tampa Bay. So will this be a kind of a revenge spot? But I like Baker better than I do Jalen Hurts. It just depends on how healthy that Tampa Bay is going to be. But that would be just a well of a game. And then you look at the game again. You look at the matchups. The Rams versus the Eagles. Sean McVay versus Nick Sirianni. That's no contest. Stafford versus Jalen Hurts. Again, no contest. It really depends on the health of Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua going in the playoffs. Look, if those guys are healthy, that's a matchup where it'd be interesting for me. I'd probably lean toward the Rams because, again, really high on the Rams and really high on Tampa Bay right now.
Yeah, two teams no one's really considering. So
yep.
So that plays out. The Travis Hunter 50-1 bet hit. So
yeah, massive, right?
You can hit these big bets on these future plays.
Yep, I absolutely. Look, I mean, that's what people listen to the show, people buy the notebook, people tell me on Sundays or Mondays or Thursdays or whenever, or in Saturdays, is that their expectation is that I do the work and then I can see around some corners and hopefully feed the people and give them some money. Certainly there's been a weekend or here or two or there where I haven't lived up to those standards, but for the most part this year, I'm ahead. I've got a winning record this year, as usual, and hopefully some of you guys have taken advantage of some of these future bets and have placed some of those and actually made some money off those. Nothing makes me happier is when people post their tickets like, "Hey, I bet this game because you said to," and you put it on there and you post those tickets and you won. Man, nothing makes me happier because that's why I do this. I do this for that. I could just like a lot of other people that are sharps that do this and can make their living doing this. They kind of lay in the shadows and don't really come out and give this. You have a lot of people on social media that are good social media people, but aren't really good at giving picks. They're just good at creating content. And, of course, that's what gets buzz, right? Content gets buzz. Post more content and post a bunch of stats and, or do some stuff that are funny. And everybody's got their shtick, right? I decided, that, hey, I want to do something where I could actually help people and give something back. I've had someone early in my career that helped me with this. And so, it's kind of an opportunity to pay it back. So this is a great opportunity and hopefully other people are making some money off this.
Absolutely. That's why you come to the shows. Well, let's keep going. Yep. A lot of good information on each and every game. Next up, we got the Arizona Cardinals at 7-7 heading into Carolina to play the 3-11 Panthers. What do you think on this one?
Yeah, it should be an interesting game. I'm trying to mine are a little out of order from yours, so let me take a minute and pull it up. I think I have found it now. I know you guys have heard of my notebook by now, probably more than you wanted to, but I also I have my Uncle Phil's workbook where I keep running my notes, personal things of what I think are important, how these teams are, the weather, obviously the spread, but the money splits, the against the spread, how these people are doing, both not only versus the side but the total. I look at injuries, I look at their schedule, where are they doing straight up, all those things. And so I create a document each week that it varies each week. Last week it was 43 pages long that I keep up with, and this week I've got something working and heading very similar in that direction because, again, more information by the end of the year. Arizona 7-7, Carolina 3-11, 41 and clear in Carolina, and winds northeast 5 miles an hour. Won't be a big deal. A little bit cooler for the Cardinals than they're used to, but not terribly. I've got this one at Cardinals 3.5, and I've got a total of 45.5.
Okay. Current line is Cardinals at 4.5 with the total at 47.
47. Interesting. Look, I've been really high on both these teams at different times this year. The Cardinals, look, I even though they won last week, I didn't think that I really just wasn't overly impressed with the way they played. I thought that, again, they played the Patriots. They won 30-17, but not just, it was the Patriots, right? Patriots really injured coming into that game. I think Arizona played okay. Carolina, I certainly expected them more. They were favored for the very first time in a couple years against the Cowboys, and the Cowboys are not ready to go quietly in the night. They have a lot to show. Team seems to be rallying behind Mike McCarthy and are playing their best. Bryce Young just didn't have a good game in that game. I didn't really I didn't think they played that well, and like I said, not going to spend a whole lot of time on this game. It's not got really a ton of playoff implications. I know Arizona is technically still into it. I still think that's a race between Seattle and the Rams. Still don't feel like that Arizona's got what it takes to be a playoff team. We'll see. Maybe they'll prove me wrong. I will say this. Look, if 3.5 seems a lot favored to Arizona, but it just depends on how Bryce Young plays. If he plays like the 4 or 5 weeks previous to last week, then I think Carolina is probably going to win the game. But if he plays like he did last week against Dallas, then I think it's going to be a tough day for them.
Absolutely. I got to believe people are looking at that game from last week and they're like probably taking Arizona. But I see what you're saying. I mean, he looked great in the previous 3 games. Or maybe not great, but a lot better than what he once was.
Yeah. And right. The question is that it really comes down to me. I mean, Arizona seems to be continuing to play. What you want to see is that teams that are some continuity in play, when teams are laying an egg or when teams are peaking, you don't know what it was. So you don't know last week is if it's Dallas that is starting to play better or Carolina just had a bad game, because Carolina has been playing lights out the past few games prior to last week with Dallas. But Dallas has kind of owned that series. Not to say that a lot of people haven't owned the series with the Panthers, but last week's play against Dallas was really surprising.
All righty, let's go to the next one. It's not super exciting, but it is a divisional matchup. We've got the 3-11 Tennessee Titans heading in to play the 6-8 Indianapolis Colts at 1 Eastern.
Yep. I am finding that one as we speak as well, and I pulled it up. That one is that one's in a dome, so no weather. I've got this one, Indianapolis 3.5, and I've got a total at 43.5.
Okay, you're right on the money with the side. It's 3.5 for Indianapolis, and the total's 42.5, so off by a point, but pretty close once again.
Yeah, interesting. Obviously, the big change this week is that Will Levis is benched. I thought that Will Levis had earned an extra year, but his play last week was just over the top. Brian Callahan pulled him. Mason Rudolph came in, did a much better job. Will be an interesting game. I guess Will Levis, to finish that thought, he turned the ball over 4 times, 3 interceptions and 1 fumble. Looked like the Will Levis of early in the year. I don't know what he's doing commercials for mayonnaise. A guy has not proven anything. I mean, all he does is do a bunch of curls, and he's really interested in how he looks rather than his craft. It's just unfortunate because the guy, I think he's talented. He's just kind of a head case, and that's always been the thing that I've heard. I've talked to a couple people within the league. One an agent and another guy who's a coach in the league, and both of them were like, "This guy's a head case," and it took a lot of people turned a lot of people off, and why a lot of people didn't draft him in that. So, look, I think it'll be interesting to see who Tennessee is without Will Levis this week. I mean, their roster's still developing under Brian Callahan, but I'm interested to see what Mason Rudolph does. I mean, Jonathan Anthony Richardson, again, just 17 of 38 last week. Again, not even 50% as far as a passing completion. I mean, it's just bad in the NFL. I mean, it really is. It's bad. I mean, I know you're playing the Broncos, but look, you've got to be better than that. You got to be better than that. You got to be able to complete more than, NFL's like, it's really 65%. That's the line to be an NFL starting quarterback. You've got to complete above that. Anthony Richardson is woefully below that. They're favored in this game, but I think this game ends up being a little tighter than you think it is.
Definitely. Yeah, I think both these teams just need new quarterbacks. You're going to have to move a different direction.
Well, that's a choice, right? I mean, I think you bring up a really good point. I mean, you've given Anthony Richardson, everybody was just completely beside themselves. The media was just so woke about it, about like, hey, you can't bench Anthony Richardson. It's just terrible. It's unfair. And, he was played, but the owner, Irsay, made Shane Steichen play him. You've given him, Shane Steichen is he is better than just a good coach. He is a great coach, especially from an offensive perspective. And to not have Anthony Richardson actually developing, I mean, I think you've almost given him his shot. And I think you've got to look at seriously. You're going to be drafting high, and you need to think about, is there a quarterback there? Or, what if you're a Vikings fan, Matt? What if Shane Steichen gets Sam Darnold in the offseason?
Yeah, I think Shane Steichen's still a good coach, offensive-minded. I think he could do what O'Connell's done with Darnold and, have a pretty serviceable offense.
They've got a great roster. I mean, they don't have Justin Jefferson. They don't have Jordan Addison, but they've got some weapons. They've got a really good roster. The problem is the quarterback position, and they just haven't got that. And I think Darnold is a product of Kevin O'Connell. I mean, you see what he's doing. I still don't trust Darnold with, a lot of things he does and that, and you have to give him really high structure. You have to give him an offensive head coach. But if you gave him Shane Steichen, I think that Darnold's definitely going to have a market this year. I mean, look, if Kevin O'Connell sees JJ and Darnold equal, you definitely go with JJ because he's cheaper, right? You can develop him and build a franchise around him. Certainly good in preseason, but what's exactly preseason? Preseason's fool's gold. Caleb Williams was telling his punter he was never going to punt in preseason in Chicago is just an absolute train wreck of a disaster right now. So, but Darnold has shown that he can actually play in structure. And we'll talk a little bit about that when we talk about the Vikings later. But if he went to Indianapolis, I see I see them. They certainly look better than what the Houston Texans look like. If they had Darnold, they would probably be winning that division this year.
Definitely. Well, let's go to the next game. We'll do a divisional matchup. We're heading to Chicago, where we got the 12-2 Detroit Lions playing the 4-10 Bears.
Okay. Again, as you said, a divisional matchup, so should be a good game, and I am just finding it. Detroit is 12-2 versus Chicago 4-10. Chicago certainly in a massive slide, looked just horrible the other night. Part of my 3-0 special on Monday night, picking against them was easy money, especially against Minnesota in that game. Again, Detroit's just devastated with injuries. Really just unfortunate for them. We'll see. I mean, this game is going to be interesting to see how this one plays out. Let's look at these guess lines. Weather's 29, partly cloudy, southeast winds 8 miles an hour. My guess is that Detroit's favored by 7, and I've got a total of 49.
Okay. I've got Detroit by 6.5 with the total at 48. So just off by half on the side and a point on the total.
Yeah, pretty much the way I thought. I mean, we'll see if Chicago's ever going to play well. It's going to be against this defense, right? Just look at Detroit. Detroit, 6 of their week 1 defensive starters are injured. I mean, 6 out of the 11. 6 out of the 11 are off the roster and are injured. I mean, you got defensive end Aiden Hudson, you got defensive tackle Liam McNeil, you got defensive tackle Kyle Pecco. You've got linebacker Alex Anzalone. You've got linebacker Derek Barnes. You've got cornerback Carlton Davis III. I mean, it's just it's really interesting. Look, I think Detroit probably wins this game, and I think probably comfortable, but I'm not sure because of the defense. I mean, if the players he's playing are people that have been waived and off practice squads that are backups, and all those people were backups and off practice squads for a reason. At some point, it just gets to be too much. We're going to see what it looks like this week. And, of course, a big loss on offense, David Montgomery out. It's all up to Jamar Gibbs now to carry the load and tote the load literally and physically on the running back side for Detroit. We're going to see what Dan Campbell's like. We saw last week some of the decision-making. I felt like ill-advised with 12 minutes left to go in the game, exactly 12 minutes. He decided to do an onside kick. I think that was ill-advised and it's poor. I don't mind the fourth downs. I've kind of gotten used to that. I think those are aggressive. I thought that was reckless. And I think those are things that he's doing. To recover the ball on onside kick is about a 1% chance in the NFL. The way they have the onside kick now, you have to declare it. And, again, it's just not favoring that. You've got to believe that even though he had a terrible, his chance of stopping the Bills going down the field was even 10% chance. It's better than the onside kick at 1% chance. Just thought that was a really terrible move and a reckless one. Big Dan Campbell fan, big on that. But the situational coaching, I think gets him beat. Not to say that it did there because I think Buffalo dominated that game from the outset. They're up 14-0, and it looked like they never really looked back until the score was a little closer than the game indicated. We'll see how that turns out. Chicago, again, looks like a mess. We kind of talked about this 2 weeks ago when it happened. And I'm like, hey, you've got Thomas Brown, and I said, when they were playing I forget who they're playing a couple of weeks ago when it was his first week as head coach. I'm like, is he going to be able to take the next step? And there's going to be continuity on offense, like when they elevated him from passing game coordinator to the head coach, or is that going to be actually, or is that going to be too much of a stretch and distract him, and then your offense is just going to fall apart? Kind of like what's happened with the Jets with Jeff Aldrich. The defense was great under Saleh, where Jeff Aldrich was defensive coordinator, promoted him head coach. The defense has just gone to complete crap. But that's exactly what happened. You promoted him too much, and the offense has gone away, and it's just not there. It's not the same anymore. So it really comes down to that. It's going to be interesting to see how it is. But, Detroit has got to hang on. They've got to hang on. They've got to continue to win these games. Their remaining schedule, I believe I have this one. No, I don't have that right now. But they've got
Detroit's got San Fran.
They've got who?
San Fran and Minnesota.
San Fran, Minnesota. Obviously, this game, San Fran's going to be, but it's going to come down to, I knew they had Minnesota at the end. That's obviously the pivotal game. Detroit has to have this home field advantage. They've got to keep that if they're going to have any shot at making it through, the NFC playoffs to get to the Super Bowl. But it starts here. We're going to find out a lot about this team this week.
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't think Dan Campbell can win 4 playoff games with his situational coaching. You can maybe do 3. I'm not sure about 4.
I'm with you.
All right. Next up, last of the 1 Eastern games, we got the New York Giants heading into Atlanta. New York's at 2-12, and the Atlanta Falcons are 7-7.
Gosh, what seemed to be an unwatchable game of I think Drew Lock versus Kirk Cousins has now turned very interesting, right? with Michael Penix just now named the starter going forward with Atlanta. I'm really interested to watch him play and see what to do. I've got Atlanta 7.5. I've got a total of 43.5.
Okay. On action, it's Atlanta 8.5 with the total at 42.
42. Okay. Yeah. Again, not surprised. I mean, the Giants again are mailing it in. It really comes down to how Michael Penix is going to play. Michael Penix is, I won't spend a lot of time on this game at all. I think we saw enough of the Falcons on Monday night. I don't think we need to belabor them tonight, but excited to see how Michael Penix is going to be. If they can cover that spread, it's going to be really Michael Penix. I know inside the building, they're very high on Michael Penix and thinks he's doing a really, really good job. What's kept Kirk Cousins in that job is that they really convinced Arthur Blank that he's got to write a $100 million check guaranteed to Kirk Cousins. He did that. It was really tough to go against that. But Kirk just doesn't look good right now. He's all of a sudden falling off a cliff.
No doubt that Achilles injury at his age, tough to come back from, and, questionable decision to give him all that money. But they do have Penix, so we'll see.
We'll see, right? I mean, the thing that Penix do, I mean, like I always thought, I thought Penix in college, my comp for him is always he's a better version of Tua. And I think he gets the job done. He's got just a great deep ball, very accurate. I didn't like some things from a leadership standpoint after the game when Washington lost to Michigan in that championship game. I mean, Penix was under pressure and he was wildly off target, threw some bad balls, and then after the game, he didn't stand up and take ownership. He actually blamed people. His offensive line was jumping off sides and blamed everybody. Didn't point it back at himself. It's not what a true leader does. So I'm interested to see how he's matured. I'm not going to hold that over him forever, but it was a red flag for me. We'll see how he does and holds up under pressure. But I would expect him. He gives a threat of the deep ball where Kirk Cousins is just checking it down, and but I just don't think they've run a really good offense for Kirk. But again, Kirk may not be able to run the offense like they want to, just because, to your point, he's a statue back there off the Achilles. I don't think it's by the way he doesn't move back there, it shows me that the Achilles hasn't healed like he had hoped it would, or like they had hoped it would. And he is truly a statue back there, and it's not a good combination.
Definitely. Alrighty, let's move on to the next game. We're heading to Seattle at 4:05 Eastern, where the 12-2 Minnesota Vikings are taking on the Seahawks at 8-6.
Yeah, well, this is your Minnesota Vikings, right? And we'll see how this one plays out. I've got on this one again. Let me find it. I apologize. This one's an interesting game. Weather's going to be a factor here in this game. This is a sneaky, interesting game to see how this one plays out. This one's 49 degrees, 96% chance of rain, winds from the southeast at 8 miles an hour. So almost surely this one's going to be raining throughout. How does Sam Darnold perform in this? Is Geno going to play? Because again, it's knee injury. We don't know how that one's going to play. I put this one because, again, we just don't know at this point if Geno's going to play. This is going to change my handicapping wildly on this game. But first cut, I've got Minnesota 3, and I've got a total at 43.5. Matt?
Yep. Sorry, I was on mute. I got anxious. I was excited because the total's 3 for Minnesota, and the side's 3 and the total's 43.5. So you nailed it. So I was on mute saying you got it right on, but good stuff.
Well, good. I'm surprised that I did, just because I just was really unsure about this one, because without Geno going to play. But again, I'm really curious to see what Sam Darnold's going to be like. Looks like they're condensing the offense. He's not free throwing the ball like he was first of the year. I mean, he did 2 weeks ago. Who'd they play 2 weeks ago? You're a Vikings fan. I'm sure you know that, right?
2 weeks ago, they played.
Yeah, week 14.
Yeah, they played. God, who did they play?
I'm pulling it up right now.
They played the Falcons. Sorry.
They played the Falcons. That's right. That's right. Yeah, because it was a homecoming for that. You know, and they and Darnold threw some pretty spectacular passes. You know, athletic little thing. But again, outside of that, the past few weeks he's been pretty condensed and not really playing. Like I said, he was shaky. I thought against Chicago, not really a great team right now, but Darnold was 24 of 40, 60% completion percentage. Not great. Had one interception. His 5.7 yards per pass attempt was tied for a season low. To me personally, I could definitely see the difference between him and Caleb. Caleb is raw. He's got all this talent. He just needs the coaching. Darnold is a product of the coaching. They coached some of the reckless out of him, you know, but he had off-target throws. I thought a bad interception, and I just sometimes his confidence and his subsequent decision making sometimes are a question for me. We'll see. But again, he's going to get paid this offseason. We'll see how he does. He's had 29 passing TDs this year alone, which is more than all of his 32 previous starts combined. So again, really good effort. Seattle looks like the game plan was out. We'll see if Minnesota does the same thing that Green Bay did, follows their playbook. Green Bay's like, hey, if we get the coin flip, we're taking the ball because we're going to take Seattle's crowd out of this. That's exactly what they did. They were never in that game. And they also, the other thing they did is they took the run away. When you take the run away, Geno is much less threatening, and it's a problem. We'll see how that works out. We'll see if Geno's going to play. We certainly saw if Sam Howell plays this weekend, expect that line to go up and up and up because Sam Howell looked horrendous. I mean, he was one of the most sacked quarterbacks in Washington, and granted their offensive line wasn't that good, but he made it worse. He holds on the ball too long, makes poor decisions, and Minnesota will cakewalk through that game if Sam Howell's the starter.
Yep, I agree with that. But if Geno plays, maybe it's a look-ahead spot too for the Vikings. With they got Green Bay and Detroit on tap, and they're going for the 1 seed, and we'll see.
100%. Yeah, that certainly makes the difference there.
Alrighty, let's go on to the first of the 4:25 Eastern games, where we have the 3-11 New England Patriots heading into Buffalo to take the Bills at 11-3.
Yeah, this is our. I think we've had our first weather in the 20s this week, and then this is our first weather that's actually in the teens. It's going to be a cold one in Buffalo, 10 degrees but clear. So no snow day. Winds from the mild northeast, a mild 10 degrees, right? Northeast 5 miles an hour, so not a big deal. I've got this one again. Appears on New England's health, but Buffalo's a team that's rolling right now and putting up a lot of points. I stretched it out as far as the total being a division game or a side, but I'm probably low. I'll just go ahead and say that. But I put 11.5 and I put 47. You're muted.
Total's 46.5, so just missed by half point there. And the side's actually Buffalo 14. So a lot of points for a divisional game, but it is Buffalo. I mean, they're playing at a very high level.
They definitely are playing at a high level. The problem with Buffalo, and again, their fatal flaw, I mean, you can't turn on Sports Center or any sports show and not hear Josh Allen, Josh Allen, Josh Allen. But it's the defense this year. It's the defense that, again, this defense is, averaging, giving up 35 points a game since week 7, and are, even though their offense is averaging that, but their defense, the Rams and the Lions both went up down the field. I don't expect Drake May to do that, but again, their defense really can't stop the run, and that's the problem for them. We'll see how it works out this week. This week should be an easy game. The last 3 weeks should be easy to them. I think that, regardless how this plays out, depending on what Kansas City does, if Kansas City wins 2 of their last 3, I'm sure Buffalo's going to rest a lot of people in week 18. But Buffalo should win this going away. 14 is a big number, but I certainly wouldn't bet against it, especially the way New England played last week. It really just depends on the health of New England. New England may be playing for a spot in the draft at this point. You have to watch that this time of year. If it's a division game earlier in the year, you definitely take New England. Right now, I wouldn't rule out Buffalo just wrecking them.
Okay, let's go to the next game. We've got the San Francisco 49ers at 6-8 heading into Miami to play the Dolphins at 6-8 as well.
Okay. The weather is a beautiful 72 degrees, mostly cloudy, winds northeast 10 miles an hour. This is one of those, again, we talked about it when the show started. We said that the NFC is beating the AFC in straight up games this year. This is a NFC AFC matchup. We'll see. I think this is going to be a tight spread. I got Miami 1.5, and I got a total at 43.5.
Okay. The total's 44.5, and the side's Miami -1.
Okay. You said -1?
Correct.
44.5. Okay. So pretty close to what I thought it would be. Again, this is an interesting game. I mean, it is. I think they've ruled out Trent Williams for the rest of the year, so that's a problem. San Francisco doesn't really win well without Trent Williams. When he doesn't play, when he plays, they're 43-25. When he doesn't play, they are 4-9 straight up. So, can Miami make him pay? I don't think Tua's played particularly well the past 2 weeks. I thought D'Amico Ryans and that defense did a lot to confuse him this past week. With San Francisco, with Dre Greenlaw back at linebacker, he and Fred Warner patrolling that middle, taking away some of those crossing routes. That could be an issue for Miami. We'll see. Both teams are 6-8. We'll see how this one plays out. I'm interested to see, Brock Purdy's got a lot to play for. I think both teams are pretty much eliminated from playoffs, or might as well be. But Brock Purdy's trying to play for a contract. So expect San Francisco to play hard this weekend. Okay,
sweet. Let's go to the last of the 4:25 Eastern games, where we have the 3-11 Jacksonville Jaguars heading into Vegas to play the 2-12 Raiders.
Well, we're going to keep this one quick.
Works for me.
Yeah, dome, so no weather. My guess is Vegas 2.5 and a total at 41.
Okay, Vegas -1, total at 40 for this one. So
okay,
pretty close on the total side. Out of all the guesses, I mean, you've been pretty much spot on. When you're off by 1.5, it feels like a lot. So,
yeah, and I think this one's just so much unknown, right? I mean, this is 2 bad teams again, really trying to play for draft position, and it's really just coming to the injury report. I think where I've had success in the past is if you go to the injury report on Friday and see who has the most people that are out. And then you realize the philosophy of the team. You're like, okay, this team is really NFL players are still playing hard, but ownership can still try to put their thumb on the results by they're like, okay, looks like you've got a bruise on that ankle. You're sitting out this game. And so they're playing for next year. Both these teams are. They're playing for the off season and they're playing for draft position for next year. So that's the only thing that makes this one interesting. And the best way to handicap that is go to the injury report on Friday.
Alrighty. Before we move on to Sunday Night Football, let's talk about the draft for one quick second.
Yeah.
Who do you think is going to end up going first overall, and to what team?
The Giants are playing hard for that position. I mean, the Giants are just they couldn't be. It couldn't be more obvious that they are tanking at this point. I mean, if you look at their injury list on Friday, looks like half their team is on the injury list.
And for Shedeur, is that kind of what you're thinking?
Well, it's an odd thing that Shedeur is. There's, even though Deion's come out and said otherwise, and blatantly said that's a lie. There's a lot of people out there that are saying that he does not want Shedeur. He does not want Shedeur going to the Giants, and Shedeur has openly said that he wants to play for the Raiders. They just have an affinity for that team, and who knows if it's. I can't say that the Raiders are better managed because they're certainly not. It just could be a personal preference on that, but we'll see how that one plays out. I really don't care for either general manager and Antonio Pierce. I like Brian Daboll a lot. I think he'd be employed about 5 seconds for someone actually hired him again. Antonio Pierce, this is his one and only shot, and I don't think he's going to make it.
Alrighty. Well, thought I would ask. I think that's a better question than going over that ugly game, but we go over all of them, kind of like Red Zone shows every touchdown. We go over every game.
We do. I mean, I think we just lost 400 viewers
They're all gone
on that game, but we'll continue to keep it up.
Yeah. Well, we got Sunday night, and this might be a sneaky good game. We got the 8-6 Tampa Bay Buccaneers heading into Dallas to play the 6-8 Cowboys.
Super sneaky game, right? And I'll tell you why it's even more of a sneaky game. I mean, Dallas. We think Dallas is playing well, and they have been playing well the past few games. The thing about Tampa Bay right now is that Baker Mayfield did not practice today with a knee injury, and that's what makes this. You got to feel like Baker's going to play, but man, if we have Kyle Trask to play, I mean that changes this. But he's got to play. They've got to win. They cannot lose to the Falcons. The Falcons are going to beat the Giants this weekend. So this is a game that they can't lose. They can't be tied with the Falcons going in this. Lots of intrigue. Dallas is playing, just absolutely playing their butts off lately. Super interesting game for a lot of reasons. I wasn't as pumped about this game initially, but after looking at it a couple of weeks ago, but I am now. You're right. Super sneaky good game.
Sweet. And as far as the side and total, where do you come in on that?
Yeah, thank you. I got excited about talking about Baker's knee. Dome. I've got Tampa Bay. I'm assuming Baker's going to play, and I've got them Tampa Bay at 2.5, and I've got a total at 47.5.
Okay. The total is 48.5, and the side is actually Tampa Bay 4. So,
wow.
I think they probably think Baker's going to play based on that line.
What was the total again?
48.5.
48.5. So off by one. Yes, they definitely think Baker's going to play. That's That's a lot of points. But again, this Tampa Bay team is a juggernaut. Again, what they can do is they can run the ball, got a great left tackle, and Baker is a surgeon back there. Baker has a good game. They should win and cover. Dallas, great on the road. Dallas is 5-2 on the road, but only 1-6 at home. So not a great particular record for them at home this year. Some of it has to do with opponents, but a lot of it's just some of their bad play.
Okay. I've got nothing else on that one. Let's move on to Monday Night Football, where we've got the 5-9 New Orleans Saints heading into Lambeau Field to take on the 10-4 Green Bay Packers.
Yeah. Look, this one's very interesting. This could be our snow game. 29 degrees in Lambeau, 22% chance of snow. Obviously, that can change a lot. And winds south 5 miles an hour. So we'll see how that one's going to be. Would be fitting to have our Monday night game right before Christmas to have a snow game. We'll hold out hope for that. Look, a dome team going and playing outside, especially at Green Bay this time of year, I don't have much hope for them. But again, I probably put this low as far as the side, but I put Green Bay 10.5 and I put a total of 43.
Okay. Yeah, you did come in low on the side. It's Green Bay 14.5.
Oh, wow.
So that's big.
It's really big.
Total's 42.5.
Especially with a total of that and 14.5. That's big. It's really, really, really big. We'll see. Again, a lot's going to depend on the weather for me. We'll see. Jake Haener is not going to start this one. It'll be Spencer Rattler starting. He played really well, but that was in the dome. And him playing on the road in the elements at Green Bay, that's makes me think a rough time for them. Interesting thing that Green Bay did, or not, New Orleans did. They signed the Chiefs waived running back Clyde Edwards-Helaire this past week. New Orleans signed him to the practice squad, so we could see Clyde Edwards-Helaire turn in for New Orleans this week. We will see how it goes. Green Bay, you've got to, Jordan Love's completely turned things around weeks 1 through 11, 16 TDs, 11 interceptions. Week 12 through 15, he's heating up, 7 TDs, no interceptions. And on defensive side, they've got the NFC Defensive Player of the Week because of his performance in Seattle, and Edgerrin Cooper, linebacker, 5 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 1 sack, 1 interception. Played a heck of a game last week. So again, should be a really really good slate of games this week. Again, 16 games, enjoying every one of those. I just simply can't wait. But before that, we've got playoffs on Friday and Saturday for college. So it's going to be a great weekend.
Absolutely. And before we kind of wrap up here, just to stay on that New Orleans Green Bay game, we were texting before the season started, and you mentioned to me that you thought Green Bay had a shot to go to the Super Bowl. They're looking pretty good. They seem like they don't have any weaknesses. You didn't list them with Tampa, LA, and Philly. Do you think Green Bay is in that mix?
Yeah, I think it's a really good point, and I think I was wrong in not listing them, because Green Bay, I think right now that they actually could be the best team in that division. I really do. I mean, they're certainly playing like it right now. I don't know if Detroit can hold up. Again, I feel like that Minnesota is kind of my Kansas City. I think that Minnesota is not as good as their record, even though their record is what it is, right? I just feel like that Minnesota is not playing, and it's really from the quarterback position, from Sam Darnold. I'm not as confident in him in the playoff. I am confident in Jordan Love. But, again, they went to Seattle. They stepped on Seattle's neck in the very first half. But, not just because I had Seattle in to cover a teaser, which didn't cover this past week. I felt like if Geno Smith would have stayed in that game, I think Seattle would have covered in that and done that. So we will see how this one goes. This one may not give us the indication of what we're looking for on this game, but like I said, I think that I think Green Bay is playing some of their best ball right now. And there's a part of me who thinks they're the best team, could be the best team in that division, but we're going to find out, right? Because next week is the big test. Off a short week after playing Monday night, they've got to go to Minnesota. We'll find out who's real in Week 17.
Absolutely. Alrighty, any final thoughts before we wrap up? Thought it was a good show. Maybe if you want to touch on kind of your plans for college football. I know a lot of people are looking to see what you have to put out over the weekend for that.
Yeah, great question. Friday night, I'll have a public pick. I'm going to play a bowl game, and I'll have 2 picks out that'll be public, both the bowl game and the playoff game. And then Saturday, I'll have 3 playoff games, and I'll have both NFL games. Those will all be in the notebook. So, and the notebook is the same. You'll get Friday, you get Saturday and Sunday for one price. So, again, should be a fun weekend. Glad you mentioned that. I'll put out a schedule later this week to let everybody know the times and when everything's dropping. But again, really excited about this weekend and what it has. I mean, college football playoffs, first time we've ever done that. Should be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Well, looking at these games, how does this week feel for you? Just first glance, you're like, hey, I got some games I really like. Or you like, I got to look at it a little more?
Yeah, well, I definitely have to look at it a lot more, but there's some games that, last week I had a tough time narrowing it down on the NFL plays that, because there are a lot of games I liked. There are a lot of games I like right now. And but again, a lot's going to depend on this Friday injury report. A lot's going to depend on the weather, and a lot's going to be the health of quarterbacks. Because again, we've got a lot of potential quarterback shifts this week that are going to take place. So injury report, health of quarterbacks, in particular, and then weather is something that I'll be looking at very closely.
Absolutely. Well, Uncle Phil, take us away.
Yeah, guys. Hey, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for spending part of your Wednesday night with us. I always appreciate you guys. You guys are the diehards because, look, this is how the sausage is made. A lot of people aren't in this. They just want the final product and all this. But this is kind of the machinations of how we go or how I go about deciding which games I'm going to play. And this gives me a really good thought process on how we're doing it. And you guys here, you guys are the junkies that actually get into this and want to know how this is done. And hopefully this helps you clarify some of your thoughts on how you're looking at games too. But guys, again, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for follow. Thanks for the trust. For Matt, who hosts and produces the show, for Smooth Andy, who's out Christmas shopping tonight, and follow Smooth Andy at Smooth Andy 5, only on X. And of course, I'm in Uncle Phil's Locks across all platforms. Guys, thanks for tuning in. I am grateful for each one of you. And as always, guys, we'll see you on Sunday for Lock In Live. Have a good week.